Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Eerie News. How's everybody doing today? Good? Well, we're off to the races. It is May 12th, 2022, Thursday, May 12th, 2022. So let's go to favorite theme in Hollywood, which is a near miss with a asteroid. This is out of the sun, and it's titled Rocky Road, New Mega Asteroid, Bigger than Empire State Building to Make Close Approach in Days. NASA is keeping a close eye on a huge asteroid that's heading towards Earth. The U.S. Space Agency expects asteroid 388945 to make a close approach to our planet on May 15th. The giant space rock is predicted to be up to 1,608 feet wide. In comparison, New York's iconic Empire State Building stands at 1,454 feet tall. An asteroid of this size would cause some serious damage if it hit Earth. There's no need to panic though, as asteroid 388945 should pass us from a distance of about 3.5 million miles away. This may sound pretty far, but in the grand scheme of space, this isn't a large distance at all. That's why NASA has still flagged it as a close approach. If an asteroid comes within 4.65 million miles and is over a certain size, it's considered potentially hazardous by cautious space agencies. Sunday's asteroid fits this description. It should shoot past from its safe distance at a speed of just over 18,000 miles per hour. NASA says the asteroid should pass Earth at about 2118, which is, I believe, 918 UTC, which is 5:18 p.m. ET and 9:18 Greenwich Mountain Time. Some experts are worried that Earth isn't yet ready to defend itself from potentially deadly asteroids. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk once sparked concern by tweeting, "A big rock will hit Earth eventually, and we currently have no defense." NASA is looking into some defense methods, though. It recently launched its double asteroid redirection test mission. NASA said DART is the first ever mission dedicated to investigating and demonstrating one method of asteroid deflection by changing an asteroid's motion in space through kinetic impact. The DART craft would slam into a small asteroid called Dimorphos in September with the aim of moving it off course. You know what? My question is, they're saying if it's a certain size, okay, which I understand, but what is it, 4.65 million miles away, then if it falls within that margin, it's considered potentially hazardous. Why? And don't get me wrong, either it's going to hit us or it's not going to hit us. Okay? And I know in the scheme of things, 4.6 million miles, I would say, is really, really far from the Earth. Okay? But it's like, why? What could happen, I guess is my question, if an asteroid within that size and within what could happen? Like this one. What could happen? Would it maybe deviate all of a sudden and hit the Earth? Like, why? I don't know. It's like, is there something that can happen at the last minute that they're not telling anybody about? Oh, well, we'll find that. Well, it's 3 days away from today. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. This is out of the debrief. Navy eyewitnesses described 2004 encounter with UAP aboard the USS Ronald Reagan. My interest in this article is not only that it's about UFOs, but my son served on the USS Ronald Reagan, but this was after 2004. But I got to get in touch with him and ask him, did you ever hear, about this? Because, those stories, they get retold. But anyway, several U.S. Navy personnel who served aboard the USS Ronald Reagan CVN-76 say they encountered a mysterious orb-shaped flying object in 2004 while on duty off the eastern coast of the United States. Nearly 2 decades later, the incident still defies explanation. Witnesses who were on the nuclear-powered Nimitz-class supercarrier the night of the incident described seeing a 20 to 40 foot wide luminous round object which suddenly appeared and began to hover over the ship's flight deck. Adding to the strangeness of the event, sailors who witnessed, they say, their naval commanders seemed disinterested that a large glowing orb was reported flying over the ship and continued normal operations without ordering any defensive actions to be taken. Now, the debrief has spoken with nearly a dozen witnesses to the 2004 incident, allowing documentation of this remarkable observation of unidentified aerial phenomena UAP by multiple U.S. Navy servicemen to finally be brought to light. The background: the USS Ronald Reagan. On July 12, 2003, the USS Ronald Reagan CVN-76 was commissioned and became the 9th Nimitz-class nuclear-powered supercarrier. At 1,092 feet long, the vessel currently supports a total crew of 5,680, often called 76ers, an air wing crew of 2,480, 80 plus aircraft, two Westinghouse A4W nuclear reactors, up to 260,000 HP and a max speed of 30 knots. In 2003, the USS Ronald Reagan called the East Coast home while conducting sea trials. This area of Atlantic Ocean operations range from Florida to Virginia, utilizing the Naval Virginia Capes Range Complex, the Cherry Point Naval Operations Areas, and the Jacksonville Operations Area. Between January and May of 2004, the carrier was undergoing secondary flight deck certifications off the East Coast as part of post-shakedown availability, a certification process for newly acquired naval vessels that allow for the correction of deficiencies that were found in the initial shakedown cruise. On May 27, 2004, Reagan left Norfolk to begin the long-serve navigation around South America to its permanent home port in San Diego, California. And this, at the time when my son served on it, it was out of Coronado Island in San Diego. During the debrief's ongoing investigation, we have identified and interviewed 5 witnesses who were aboard the USS Reagan during the time frame of the incident and who were all able to provide first-hand accounts of having witnessed the UAP. As part of this process, verification of military service was completing using DD-214 Military Separations Document, the official 2004 USS Ronald Reagan cruise book, and corroborating witness statements. Although multiple interviews and records checks were conducted, none of the witnesses we spoke with were able to remember the specific date of the encounter. UAP witness number 1, Carol Olesiak. I think it's a Polish name, sorry, I butchered that name. Was a third-class petty officer and quartermaster on the Ronald Reagan at the time of the incident. His job involved navigation of the ship, working from the main bridge at the navigation table. He was also responsible for the USS Reagan's official ship logbook during the encounter. On the day of the UAP event, Carroll was quartermaster of the watch during the 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. time frame. This duty required him to report to the main bridge navigation table and involved coordination of the maneuvering of the vessel. Olesiak told the debrief that when he arrived to relieve the previous watch that evening, the outgoing quartermaster of the watch indicated something was already going on at that time, though the individual offered no additional information. However, it soon became apparent to Olesiak that something was happening outside above the flight deck. "I'm pretty sure it was there," Olesiak said, "and they were like, I don't know what that is. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, they had an attitude like, I'm going to my rack, I don't care. Don't even bother me about this shit. So this thing is there, the entirety of my watch, and because the officers are ignoring it, I'm forced to ignore it." Olesiak emphasized that everyone was working 16-hour shifts, and unless an issue was life-threatening, most problems were prioritized. He stated that his prior training in boot camp indoctrinated him not to question orders. The officer of the watch continued normal bridge operations, he said. Olesiak said he saw a large, round, and orange-colored glowing object with a fiery surface hovering about 100 feet above the flight deck. He said he viewed this object directly through the windows on the bridge at eye level. Olesiak says the surface of the object reminded him of biblical descriptions of the burning bush. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, they explained the burning bush as an unburnt energy, Olesiak mused. When you see it, you're entranced by the novelty of it. You've never seen it before, right? You've never seen negative energy, but it's there. You don't know what it is, the experience of seeing something you haven't seen before. Olesiak pointed out that the officer of the watch and the conning officer on the bridge were not alarmed by the object. They continued working as if nothing unusual was going on. When asked to clarify why he did not report his sighting, Olesiak stated that his training required him to defer to senior officers since they had observed it and were not reacting. Otherwise, it was his responsibility to stay on task. It's a problem when somebody says that it's a problem. It's a problem when somebody tells you that it's a problem. He stated. Carroll said he was surprised aircraft operations continued. And it's watching the planes get launched, he said. For me, even though I'd never seen it before, I thought that this was natural and that, that this was an organic thing, that we would maybe another form of life, maybe, but something we would figure out in the future. Carroll only viewed the object from his position on the bridge. He does not remember seeing the object arrive or move in any other way than match the speed of the ship, which he said was ahead at 22 knots based on flight ops. He believes that the object was in the same location during the entirety of his 4-hour watch. Oleksiak first wrote about the sighting on his website in October of 2021. UAP investigator Keith Basterfield brought this article to the attention of Dave Beatty for this report. You can also hear more from Carroll Oleksiak in an interview that he did. The second UAP witness, Derek Smith, entered the Navy in February 2002 as a seaman in the deck department responsible for ship maintenance and operations. Smith was also trained as a lookout. Lookouts are trained in visual recognition of aircraft, ships, and marine mammals. At the time of the sighting, Smith says he was outside an upper-level catwalk that surrounded the island superstructure of the ship. This starboard forward lookout position is approximately 50 to 75 feet above the deck. Smith reported that he was with a female trainee at the time of the sighting, referred to here as witness number 3. Soon after arriving on watch, their attention was drawn to a large orange-colored glowing object hovering above the flight deck several hundred feet in front of them, just above the center line of the ship forward of the island. I'm sitting here looking at this thing, and I couldn't tell what it was. There was a shape to it. It was oval-shaped. It didn't look solid, but it had a shape to it. Derek said he reported the sighting to the carrier's Tactical Operations Center as required using the sound-powered microphone and headset the lookouts used. He also stated that he looked at the object through the Big Eye's deck-mounted binoculars. He said it looked like a glowing, gaseous, self-luminous object. It also appeared to have a moving, swirling surface, but he was unable to identify it as a plane or helicopter. Smith recalls observing the object for several minutes. On starboard forward, you had, I'd say, about 70% of the flight deck in front of you. And I remember we were looking down at the flight deck, and you had airmen on there, and me and her were just looking at each other. And then we looked down at the flight deck, and all the people, while flight deck was looking up at the object. All right, then we're off to witness number 3. Accompanying Derek Smith on the lookout during the event was a female trainee or UI undergoing instruction shipmate, referred to as witness 3, who wishes to remain anonymous. They spoke to her on April the 3rd, 2022 about the sighting, at which time she was able to confirm several details provided by Smith and Oleksiak. Witness number 3 states that she had not communicated with any of the other witnesses in the last 19 years and had never read Oleksiak's article about the sighting. According to Witness 3, she did not arrive on the ship until November or December of 2003 in the Newport News Naval Shipyard. During the encounter, Witness 3 says she was undergoing training with Smith, who she refers to as Smith D. At one point, they both became aware of a large, round, glowing object hovering over the flight deck, a few hundred feet above them and pacing the ship, which was then underway. Witness 3 said Smith directed her to call the operations center to report the air contact, and that upon calling in the report she was met with some skepticism on the radio and was asked if she was smoking crack. Differing from Oleksiak's and Smith's account, Witness 3 said she recalled that the first observation happened before sunset around dusk and that it was cloudy at the time. She further recalls seeing the object depart into the clouds. Witness 3 says she recalls that Tactical Operations also reported having an air search radar contact during the event. After I had called it in, they were like, let us know what happens, and then it stayed with us. I don't remember how long it stayed with the ship, but it stayed with the ship for a while. It just followed us. And they were like, well, what's your positioning with the sun? I was like, that's not the sun. Witness 3 also said the people working on the flight deck were observing the object, some of them with increasing concern. There was a group of them, Witness 3 recalls, we had seen them down there, and they had looked up and pointed up, and they all took off. They just ran off the flight deck. Like, they dropped their stuff and took off, and that's when we looked up, and we're like, what's that? There was a huge ball above their heads. They all took off. Witness 3 described the object as a large round object with a glowing orange color and fuzzy looking edges, solid but not defined edges. The inner color was swirling much like science video of the sun close up, she said. She described a sudden series of a half circle like maneuvers just before it shot off into the clouds at extreme speed. Witness 3 says they had not been engaged in flight operations during the sighting, that those exercises had been completed earlier, and that the Air Department was busy securing the equipment when this sighting first happened. She says her watch ended after dark and remembers being on the bridge rotation on the lee helm duty station with Derek Smith and hearing other watchstanders commenting about the UFO. She also remembers instructions that no log entry should be made about the event. UAP Witness 4. Patrick Goki enlisted in the Navy in August of 2003, and after basic training and A school, he was stationed on the USS Ronald Reagan in November 2003. He boarded the ship in Newport News Naval Shipyard as a seaman. Goki reports that he believes the sightings took place during the sea trials, where the carrier would put out to sea for 1 to 2 week periods, doing qualifications between December 2003 and May 2004. He recalls being told, "We are in the Bermuda Triangle." On the night of the UAP encounter, he says he was assigned lookout watch from 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., and the first time he observed the object was from the starboard forward lookout station on the catwalk of the island. He says up to 10 lookout positions would be manned during that period, and they would rotate the positions each hour. "I just saw this bright orange ball, and it was wavy, but somehow still solid like a plasma, almost," Goki said, "and it would just appeared over the flight deck, maybe 200 feet off the flight deck. It sat there for about 30 seconds. Goki told the debrief that he recalls flight operations were taking place and that dozens of air personnel were on the flight deck below him. He said after some time he watched the object as it moved away rapidly. It didn't seem to move at all. We were moving during flight ops, and it seemed to stay with us, but without any movement that you could discern. After that, it just did 3 half circles, just 1, 2, 3, and it was gone. I mean, just in the blink of an eye, it was gone. And so that was pretty weird, and I reported it," Goki said, noting that other people had reported it. During one of his rotations, Goki says he was stationed on the fantail lookout position. This area is a catwalk on the very back end of the carrier below the flight deck and provides an unobstructed view behind the ship. It was during this watch that he once again spotted an object. "I was on the fantail by myself, and the same thing," Goki said. "It came back by us on the fantail, and it hovered, maybe 100 or 200 feet in the air, in the same, maybe the same distance behind. It did 3 circles. It did 3 half circles, and it took off." Goki stated he believes the object was closer this time and appeared to have the same characteristics and description as the first object. Based on his description of the object pacing the ship and performing 3 similar half-circle movements just before the object shot away rapidly, he believes it was under intelligent control. "Yeah, it was somehow controlled," Goki said. "It just couldn't have been random." Witness number 5. At the time of the sighting, the individual identified as Witness 5, who also wished to remain anonymous, was the boatswain's mate of the watch. His duties included overseeing all lookouts and keeping a boatswain's mate logbook at his station inside the bridge, and he reported to the officer of the watch. Witness 5 said he was in contact with all lookouts, including Derek Smith, Witness 3, and Patrick Goki, as well as other lookouts on duty. He said when he came out to his watch that evening, he was contacted by his chief, who told him to go outside and see why the lookouts were horsing around on the intercom system talking about UFOs. Witness 5 said he immediately went outside prepared to chew out the lookouts. As he approached the starboard forward lookout post, he said he immediately observed a large round object about 200 feet above the flight deck in front of him. He reported that the object was glowing orange and seemed to be somewhat fuzzy and like a blob. It did not shine any light onto the flight deck of the ship, and the color was similar to the orange work lights used on the ship at night. He noticed airmen working below on the flight deck looking up at this object, but said no air operations were going on at the time. He said he did not see the UAP arrive, depart, or make any movement during the several minutes he observed it. It was like a translucent blob, really translucent, he said. You could kind of see through it. It was like a lava lamp. It had a type of movement. It seemed almost like viscous, but in the air, and it moved. Witness 5 said that while it may seem unusual to most civilians that the officers did not seem to be alarmed by the sight of this object, he said everyone was operating on a lack of sleep and significant amounts of physically strenuous work. At the time, Witness 5 said he wondered about the lack of action by the officers, but concluded it was above my pay grade. More concerning, however, had been that when Witness 5 got back to his watch station and the bridge and began to write the sighting into his log, he was told by his chief to rip it out. The debrief has communicated with Witnesses 5's Naval Public Affairs Office requesting permission for the active duty service member to speak on the record, but has not received any response to date. Searching for the date. Narrowing down the exact date of the incident, which occurred nearly 2 decades ago, presents its own challenges. Carl Isiak originally believed the event may have occurred during the Hurricane Isabel avoidance underway in September of 2003. With a large hurricane threatening the eastern seaboard, the USS Ronald Reagan and 40 other ships left Naval Station Norfolk to ride out the storm. However, 2 other primary witnesses that were interviewed stated that they did not board the ship until November of 2003. Based on these witness statements, it appears the event happened between December 3rd and December of 2003 and May of 2004 when Reagan left Norfolk for San Diego. What did the USS Ronald Reagan UAP look like? The various primary witness descriptions of the object were largely consistent. Assuming the witness accurately described the object they witnessed, it appeared to have the following visible features. Roughly the size of a jet fighter, 10 to 40 feet wide, hovering 100 to 200 feet above flight deck forward of the island, yellow, orange, reddish, fire-colored, round or sideways oval, a blob, gaseous surface appearance with movement on the surface, burning-like surface appearance, like science videos of the sun. Edges are not flat and symmetrical, rough edges, fuzzy edges. Possible translucent opacity, soft luminous, not reflected light. No illumination on the flight deck from the object. No sound or odor from the object reported. 2 witnesses observed both hovering and half-circle movements when the object departed. 2 witnesses observed the object depart at a rapid speed. Possible prosaic causes. Very few prosaic explanations fit all the observations reported by the witnesses, yet some scientific research into luminous aerial phenomena, such as ball lightning and earthquake lights, has resulted in data suggesting that under certain rare conditions, natural processes can result in similar visual displays of luminous aerial shapes. In the case of earthquake lights, EQL phenomena, several studies have presented the hypothesis that highly stressed rock layers within geologic fault lines can produce luminous emissions preceding earthquakes. In their 2014 co-authored research paper, Prevalence of Earthquake Lights Associated with Rift Environments, Robert Thiero of the Quebec Ministère de l'Énergie et des Ressources Naturelles, France St. Laurent, an independent geophysics researcher, Friedman Freund of NASA, and John Durr, a retired United States Geological Survey scientist, argue that reports of luminous displays have been observed near fault lines under seismic events. These luminous displays, the authors say, are a result of electrical discharges that are produced by high-stress conditions within Earth's crust and are often described as flames accompanied by smoke issuing from ground fissures, of meteor-like bolids passing over the sky at the time of the earthquake, or of luminous fogs or clouds. Having studied 65 written EQL reports dating back to the 1600s up through 2009, the authors theorize that the high-energy discharge ionize the air, which in turn creates these plasma luminosities. Okay. All right, let's go on to secret tech. Military hardware has historically been the source of UFO reports, such as the B-2 stealth bomber and F-117 stealth fighter test flights, before they were commonly known to the public. One Navy technology that may create aerial luminous balls of plasma is referenced in a 2018 patent application titled System and Method for Laser-Induced Plasma for Infrared Homing Missile Countermeasures by Alexandru Henning. The invention uses ultra-rapid laser pulses to create a filament or channel of plasma called laser-induced plasma filaments behind an aircraft to fool incoming heat-seeking missiles as an alternative to traditional countermeasure flares. These laser-produced plasma decoys can be 2D or 3D and focused at a desired distance and position. Henning has apparently worked at Space and Naval Warfare Systems Center Pacific, now called Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific, on the Secret Plasma Shield project since 2012. All right, and it goes on. Possible cover-up. One of the most puzzling aspects of this encounter was the reported lack of response from the USS Reagan's chain of command. Karol Olesiak recalled the captain was not on the bridge and was neither called nor informed. To his knowledge, while he was present, he stated that no general quarters or defensive measures were taken on the bridge. Several witnesses reported jokes about the Bermuda Triangle being mentioned. Olesiak said everyone's lack of response reminded him of the folktale called The Emperor's New Clothes, in which the emperor travels the city in invisible clothes, and the townsfolk ignore the man out of fear of staring and admitting he is actually naked. Luis Elizondo is a former U.S. Army counterintelligence special agent and former employee of the DoD. He is also the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The government program, he says, once studied military UAP sightings. He said that he is aware of similar cases where there was an effort to ignore the events taking place. So, as incredible as it may seem, this is not the first time reports of people being eyewitnesses to a UAP or UFO have behaved in a similar fashion. There are instances that we came across where certain observers almost appeared to be in essence mesmerized, or I guess in a less dramatic way, almost like hypnotized by the event, to the point where after the event, it wasn't until after the event did people kind of scratch their heads and say, "Oh my God, did we just see what we saw?" Another troubling observation from the witnesses is that they saw and overheard officers instruct the crew to not log this event into the ship's official deck log. In addition, Patrick Goki was on his bridge rotation, and he states he observed one officer ordering his subordinates to remove pages from his logbook. I remember one of the officers on the deck ordering someone to take the pages out of the deck logbook, Goki remembers, which for me was the most surprising thing because I was always told in the Navy that whatever you write in that logbook is a legal record and you can't, just destroy it, ripping out anything like that. So that was actually the most surprising thing to me. Witness 5, who was standing boatswain's mate of the watch, recalled that when he had entered the sighting into his green book or the official log of the boatswain's watch, a senior officer ordered him to rip that shit out. He said this was not the official ship deck logs that the quartermaster keeps, but rather a less formal one kept by members of the watch. Witness 3 said the lookouts were told not to write it down, and Karol Olesiak, who was maintaining the official ship's log, says he did not write down the sightings either. I asked, should I be logging this? And I think I might have asked the conning officer, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but the impression that I got was that this should not be in the official log, Karol Olesiak said. Elizondo said he's familiar with UAP cases he examined where the very stigma of officially reporting a case in the logbooks was avoided to keep the record clean of what was considered a fringe topic or uncredible topic. Similarities to other incidents. Since 2017, new details have come to light related to several incidents involving U.S. Navy personnel who says they observed UAP while on duty. These events include a notable 2004 incident involving the Navy's Carrier Strike Group 11, commonly known as the Nimitz incident, as well as a series of radar visual encounters reported by Navy personnel aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt that occurred between 2014 and 2015. Since 2020, it has been reported on several similar incidents involving U.S. Navy personnel and also confirmed the Pentagon's involvement with ongoing investigations of such incidents. The glowing UAPs reported by the crew of the USS Ronald Reagan have a similar appearance to other reported military UAP encounters, going back several decades. In March 1967, Lieutenant Robert Salas was a Deputy Missile Combat Crew Commander at the Oscar Flight Missile Launch Facility at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. This was an ICBM Minuteman missile silo complex, and according to Salas, base security guards radioed him and reported a glowing red ball over the base's front gate. Soon after that call, he reported that an 810 Oscar Flight ICBM missile went offline. Another guard at the nearby Echo Flight Launch Facility later wrote to him to report spotting an object fly past that was red or orange red in color, that glowed and looked much like a ball of fire, and had no distinct shape and appeared to be round. An additional 8 to 10 nukes then went offline at Echo Flight Launch Facility. These documented missile shutdowns, purportedly involving UAP sightings, remain unexplained and were recounted in depth in Salas's book Fated Giant, co-authored with James Klotz. Orange-colored fireball-like objects have been reported making incursions at other military nuclear installations as well. On October 28, 1975, at Loring Air Force Base, Maine, Sergeant Stephen Eichner, crew chief on a B-52 bomber, was working along with Sergeant R. Jones and other crew when Jones spotted a red and orange object over the nuclear weapons storage area. It looked like a stretched-out football, Eichner said. The crew gave chase and soon spotted an object 300 feet away from them that was hovering 5 feet above the ground. It made no sound and was a reddish-orange color about the size of 4 car lengths. Eichner described the object as if all the colors were blending together, as if you were looking at a desert scene. There were these waves in front of the object, and all the colors were blending together. The object was solid, and we could not hear any noise coming from it. The events in question, along with related government documents, were detailed by researchers Barry Greenwood and Larry Fawcett in their book Clear Intent, The Government Cover-Up of the UFO Experience. Oh boy. Linda Thompson, a MUFON field investigator who looked at the organization's private databases of UFO sightings for fireball-shaped reports, recounted that from January of 1995 to April of 2022, there were a total of 91,190 reports with 4,773 orbs and 839 Saturn-like. For instance, several of those could fit the description, and several are also described as an orb. Another national UAP reporting database is the National UFO Reporting Center. According to Newfork, the center's primary function over the past 4 decades has been to receive, record, and to the greatest degree possible corroborate and document reports from individuals who have been witness to unusual, possibly UFO-related events. Of the 138,000 reports online, 9,605 are fireball-shaped, totaling around almost 7% of all cases. Conclusion. The Uss Ronald Reagan encounter of 2004 is both profound and also perplexing, given the witness statements. UAP cases, I'd rather call them UFOs, my own personal. UAP cases are often criticized based on the lack of physical evidence, and this case is no exception. What sets this encounter apart, however, is the sheer number and quality of the witnesses. Among their qualifications, most had received training as lookouts to spot known aircraft. Of the 10 Navy vets, 5 are primary witnesses who personally saw the object and recalled the event independently. Several of these individuals had never talked about this incident in the 18 years since it occurred. While the majority of them do not recall the exact date and time, they do say they remember what they saw. Details vary slightly, but there were no widespread differences in statements or obvious indications of deceit. According to each of them, many more of their shipmates witnessed the event from the flight deck or the various other bridges and departments. Estimates range from 50 to 300 other people present during the hours-long event, they say. The lack of response from the officers of the watch and orders to not log the events is also puzzling, but possibly explainable as an unwillingness to recognize a bizarre phenomenon in an era where people who reported UFO sightings were still being stigmatized. It could also affect career advancement, according to pilots and officers we've spoken with. Today, one thing is certain. Incidents like this are mandatorily being reported using recently established Navy guidelines and sent to the new Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group at the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. According to a memo by Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, this office is tasked with coordinating with other federal agencies to detect, identify, and attribute UFOs and to assess and, as appropriate, mitigate any associated threats to the safety of flight and national security. One thing is certain. If a USS Ronald Reagan event happened today, it's unlikely the public would ever hear details the likes of which are presented here, as it would now be kept secret. Recent Navy briefings from the DoD Public Affairs Office for the Navy's Chief of Information and the Chief Office of Information obtained through a FOIA request by researcher Mark Cicotti describe assistance on responding to UAP-related media requests and state that information obtained in whatever form and from whatever source involving UAPs is classified. In other words, no unauthorized UAP information will be forthcoming from military service members in the future, as all military UAP reports are now to be deemed classified. In light of this, the significance of the testimony we recount here experienced by multiple servicemen and women aboard the USS Ronald Reagan in 2004 is of key importance in providing the public a broader understanding of what countless numbers of our armed forces personnel say that they have experienced while on duty. Okay. You know what? There was something going on there. And if you think about it, this is what, 2003, maybe beginning of 2004? We had just been attacked in 2001. Towards the end of 2001, we had a terrorist attack in several, the Twin Towers in New York. But we had, one slammed into the Pentagon. My point being that even 2 or 3 years, we were still fresh off that terrorism fear, which to me, even though it's what they're describing is a fiery ball hovering over a ship, but you would think that at some point, the officers or whoever makes decisions, they'd be like, do we determine what is this? Is this a foreign reconnoitering thing that could all of a sudden launch itself on the ship? I don't know. That's such a weird. This is unless you have been told, don't say anything, and let your crew follow your lead. Because I can't believe that any officer, maybe one, but apparently there's a lot of people there that had command, at different levels, that they all they were they were reading from the same page. It's like, just act like it's all normal. And this thing about not logging or tearing out pages, that's very weird, very unusual. And another thing, and I agree with what they say, that yes, even now, talking about a UFO sighting or anything was like a career killer, or that was the end of that. But I can understand how here you are on a ship that has about over 5,000 crew members, and I know not all of them were there and witnessed it, but let's face it, there were a lot of people that basically were looking at this thing. It was almost like that. It's not like if you have anybody that was in the command chain report something like this, it's not like they're going to say, hey, you're making this up, or hey, you've got hundreds of witnesses that corroborate what you're saying. So yeah, it makes me think that there was word that came from on high and said, just ignore it. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. Let's get on to this one. Is out of Live Science and is titled Giant Sinkhole with a Forest Inside Found in China. Species unknown to science could be hiding in this gaping hole. A team of Chinese scientists has discovered a giant new sinkhole with a forest at its bottom. The sinkhole is 630 feet deep, according to the news agency in China, deep enough to just swallow its St. Louis Gateway Arch. A team of speleologists and spelunkers rappelled into the sinkhole on Friday, May 6, discovering that there are 3 cave entrances in the chasm, as well as ancient trees 131 feet tall, stretching their branches towards the sunlight that filters through the sinkhole entrance. This is cool news, said George Vanny, the executive director of the National Cave and Karst Research Institute in the U.S. and an international expert on caves. Vanny was not involved in the exploration of the cave, but the organization that was the Institute of Karst Geology of the China Geological Survey, which is a sister institute, is. The discovery is no surprise, Vanny told Life science, because southern China is home to karst topography, a landscape prone to dramatic sinkholes and otherworldly caves. Karst landscapes are formed primarily by the dissolution of bedrock. Rainwater, which is slightly acidic, picks up carbon dioxide as it runs through the soil, becoming more acidic. It then trickles, rushes, and flows through cracks in the bedrock, slowly widening them into tunnels and voids. Over time, if a cave chamber gets large enough, the ceiling can gradually collapse, opening up huge sinkholes. Because of local differences in geology, climate, and other factors, the way karst appears at the surface can be dramatically different. So in China, you have this incredibly visual, spectacular karst with enormous sinkholes and giant cave entrances and so forth. In other parts of the world, you walk out on the karst and you really don't notice anything. Sinkholes might be quite subdued, only a meter or two in diameter. Cave entrances might be very small, so you have to squeeze your way into them. No, no. This is where the claustrophobic in me comes out. No, have to squeeze into them. Oh no. In fact, 25% of the United States is karst or pseudokarst, which features caves carved by factors other than dissolution, such as volcanic or wind. Then he said, about 20% of the world's landmass is made of one of these two cave-rich landscapes. The new discovery took place in the Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region near Pingge village in the county of Lei, according to Xinhua. Guangxi is known for its fabulous karst formations, which range from sinkholes to rock pillars to natural bridges, and have earned the region UNESCO World Heritage Site designation. The sinkhole's interior is 1,004 feet long and 492 feet wide. A senior engineer with the Institute of Karst Geology told Xinhua, the Mandarin word for such enormous sinkholes is Tiankeng, or heavenly pit, and the bottom of the sinkhole did indeed seem like another world. Chen Lixen, who led the cave expedition team, told Xinhua that the dense undergrowth on the sinkhole floor was as high as a person's shoulder. Karst caves and sinkholes can provide an oasis for life. I wouldn't be surprised to know that there are species found in these caves that have never been reported or described by science until now. In one West Texas cave, Venny said tropical ferns grow abundantly. The spores of the ferns were apparently carried to the sheltered spot by bats that migrate to South and Central America. Not only do sinkholes and caves offer refuge for life, they are also a conduit to aquifers or deep stores of underground water. Karst aquifers provide the sole or primary water source for 700 million people worldwide, but they're easily accessed and drained or polluted. Karst aquifers are the only type of aquifers that you can pollute with solid waste. I've pulled car batteries and car bodies and barrels of God knows what and bottles of God knows what out of the active cave stream. The new discovery brings the number of sinkholes in Lake County to 30, according to Xinhua. The same researchers have previously discovered dozens of sinkholes in northwest China's Shaanxi province and a cluster of interconnected sinkholes in Guangxi. Okay. You know what I think is really interesting is, okay, because, how old is this sinkhole? If we're talking unrecognized or undiscovered species, then you're talking how long has this thing been down there? Obviously, if you've got trees that are over 100 feet tall, it's been there for a while. But to say that they could discover unknown species, well, I wonder about that. I'll follow up. Next one is out of Smithsonian Magazine, titled Archaeologists Unearth 3,000-Year-Old Giant Statues in Sardinian Necropolis. The 7-foot statues have expressionless face and a mysterious history. Yeah, you could say they're expressionless. Okay. Heavy on the brow and the nose. Okay. The faces of the towering sculpted giants of the Sardinian Necropolis are eerie. They bear an almost emotionless expression that recalls the Greek archaic smile. Their deep-set eyes and blocky nose seem to betray a feeling of protectiveness, even world weariness. Even more unique is their stature. Some are almost 7 feet tall, and their age. Scholars date the artifacts back nearly 3,000 years to between roughly 850 to 750 BC. Now they have more to study. A new excavation at the Sardinian necropolis of Monte Prama recently turned up torsos of two more towering statues of boxers. Researchers identified them by the distinctive shields around their midsection, similar to two others found nearby in 2014. It's an exceptional discovery, says Dario Franceschini, Italy's Minister of Culture, in a statement. Two new jewels are added to the statue's group with its mysterious fascination, capable of attracting the attention of the whole world. But the latest statue poses a unique challenge for archaeologists. They must first be removed from the earth in a way that allows for their preservation. The two large and heavy blocks of torsos will need time to be freed from the sediment around them so they can be prepared as is necessary for their safe recovery, said a lead archaeologist for the city of Cagliari and the province of Oristano in South Sardinia. Part of the fascination with the Monte Prama site stems from its relatively recent discovery. In 1974, Sardinian farmers digging in the fields struck what turned out to be a stone head. It turned out to be one of the most important archaeological finds in the area and a window into the island's deep history. At first, archaeologists thought the statues may have dated to Carthaginian settlements in Sardinia. Carthage conquered parts of the island around 500 BC in an attempt to exert direct control over the island's inhabitants. But later dating revealed the giants to be from much earlier than that, to a time when the Nuragic civilization dominated the island around the 18th to 8th century BC. Across the island, the Nuragic people built distinctive megalithic structures known as nuraghi. Today, more than 6,000 listed nuraghi pepper the island's landscape, an astonishing number for a territory that measures little more than 9,000 square miles or slightly larger than Wales. Excavations have also yielded a major burial road, according to The Guardian. The nearly 200 graves date to between 950 BC to 730 BC, and the majority held young men. Since the mid-1970 excavations, archaeologists have continued to find fragments and larger pieces like these torsos of the giants. Out of these, they have identified roughly 24 statues. Archaeologists have classified the statues based on their characteristics. According to the Civic Museum in Cabras, where some of these statues now reside, they have so far identified 16 boxers, 5 archers, and 5 warriors. Their function is still up for debate. Archaeologists at the site hypothesize that the statues may have been ancestral custodians watching over the necropolis, a commemoration of an important local historical event, or even a symbol of the lives of the buried. The giants' fragmented states tells scholars that they were at one point purposely destroyed, raising even more questions. Did the Nuragic people break the statues themselves during an internal conflict, or did another external group do so in later decades? Those questions remain unanswered. Meanwhile, Mulas writes, Sardinians sees the statues as representative of the island's long history. The faces of the giants of Monte Prama have become so well known and celebrated, writes Mulas, that for many they have come to replace the Nuraghi buildings themselves as a symbol of the island's ancient past. You know what? If they were destroyed on purpose, it's almost like, because Necropolis is a cemetery, this is where they would bury their dead. And if, I don't know, I can't see desecration of graves. Usually you think of it as something done by an enemy. It's like, I'm going to get you, and I'm even going to get your dead, or the resting place of your. And if these all were like warrior types, archers, things, usually these were the soldier types. These were if there was a war, these type of men, as what's portrayed in these statues, are usually the ones that would defend the homeland. It's very interesting. Oh, I want to follow up on that. All right. This is out of BBC. Boy 6 finds a giant megalodon shark tooth on Bawdsey Beach. Sammy Shelton found the 4-inch tooth on Bawdsey Beach in Suffolk during a bank holiday break. It has been confirmed as belonging to a megalodon, the largest shark that ever existed, by expert Professor Ben Garrett. His dad, Peter Shelton, said Sammy was sleeping with it near his bed as he was very attached to it. The pair from Bradwell near Gorston-on-Sea in Norfolk were searching for fossils when they came across a giant shark's tooth. Sammy was very excited, as we'd seen fragments of shark teeth on the beach, but nothing as big and heavy as this, Mr. Shelton said. Photographs of the find were sent to Professor Garrett, a broadcaster and evolutionary biologist at the University of East Anglia, Norwich. It belonged to a megalodon, the largest ever shark, and its teeth are not often found around the UK coastline, he said. Maybe just a handful a year, but this is a particularly good example, in really good condition, whereas they're usually quite worn when found. Dwarfing anything else swimming in the waters at the time, these were specialist whale eaters. They were ambush hunters, Professor Garrett said. The megalodon dominated all the seas around the world other than those parts of the ocean surrounding Antarctica. The megalodon, the cartilaginous fish whose skeleton is made of cartilage rather than bone, was a carnivore and had no known predators. It could eat anything it liked, but its favorite food was whales, although seals would also have been on the menu. Most of the shark's hunting was in the open sea. Juveniles lived closer to shore, and it attacked its prey near the surface when it came up for air. Megalodon could swim at high speeds and short bursts so tended to rush its prey from beneath. It would first aim to disable its prey by injuring a flipper or the tail. Then, once unable to swim properly, the victim would be easy to finish off. Lived from about 20 million years ago, long after the dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. The name means big tooth, and the giants were active from about 22 million years ago until about 3 million years ago, when they became extinct. Sammy's find was a really big thing for the little boy, Professor Garrett said. Now, many people who look for megalodon tooth actually find one. I know I've been searching since I was a child, and I knew all the beaches around the area, but I still haven't found my megalodon. Sammy's excitement has been shared with friends at school. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. And there's a couple of sci-fi movies out there saying the megalodon. There's still megalodons swimming the oceans. And I wonder why they did go extinct. Was it lack of food? Because the bigger you are, the more you eat. Okay, this is out of Life Science, titled Fertility Cult Complex Discovered Under Turkish Home Dates to the Iron Age. Okay. A bungled looting scheme has led archaeologists to an underground Iron Age complex in Turkey that may have been used by a fertility cult during the first millennium BC, a new study finds. The ancient complex, which has yet to be fully investigated due to the instability of the structure, has a rare rock art drawings on its walls featuring a procession of deities depicted in an Assyrian style. This art appears to have been adapted by local groups, including now strongly the culture of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which hailed from Mesopotamia and later expanded into Anatolia, spread to the people it conquered to this region, according to a new study published on May 11th in the journal Antiquity. The finding bears witness to the exercise of Assyrian hegemony in the region in its early phases. One of the study's authors, Salim Ferru Adali, an associate professor of ancient history at the Social Science University of Ankara. The wall panels contains a depiction of divine possession with previously unknown elements, with Aramaic writing to describe some of the deities, while combing Neo-Assyrian, Aramaean, and Syro-Anatolian divine iconography. Authorities learned about the ancient underground complex in 2017 after looters discovered it beneath a house in a Turkish village and decided to target its treasures. However, police foiled the looters, and investigating officials soon found an artificial opening the looters had cut through the floor of the two-story house in the village of Basbuk in southern Turkey. This discovery prompted the police to notify the Sanliurfa Archaeological Museum, whose archaeologists determined that the opening, which measured about 7 by 5 feet, led to an entrance chamber carved out of the limestone bedrock in the underground complex. The subterranean complex dates to the early Neo-Assyrian period around the 9th century BC and features an upper and lower gallery as well as the entrance chamber. The original opening to the entrance chamber has not yet been found. Museum experts carried out the rescue excavation in August and September of 2018. However, they suspended the rescue excavation after 2 months because of the instability of the site. The area is now under the legal protection of Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism. During this short period of excavation, archaeologists removed sediment that had fallen due to erosion in the underground spaces, which revealed a decorative rock relief carved into a wall panel. The panel depicts a procession of gods and goddesses from the Aramean pantheon, some with Aramaic inscriptions next to them. The excavator sent photos of the inscriptions on the panel to Adali, who found that the panel had great historical significance. The expansion of the Neo-Assyrian Empire into what is now Turkey inspired a cultural revolution as the Assyrian elite used art from their courtly styles to express their power over the local Luwian and Aramaic-speaking peoples. The wall panel in Basbuk shows how Assyrian art was adapted into the Aramaean style in the provincial towns and villages the researchers found. 4 of the 8 deities depicted on the panel could not be identified, according to the study. The Aramaic inscriptions labeled 3 of the gods: the storm, rain, and thunder god Hadad, his consort Atagardis, a goddess of fertility and protection, the moon god Sin, and the sun god Samas. The drawing of I'm sorry, I'm trying to pronounce this the wrong way. The drawing of Atagardis is the earliest known depiction of this goddess, the principal goddess of Syria in this region. The researchers added, the inclusion of Syro-Anatolian religious themes illustrates an adaptation of Neo-Assyrian elements in ways that one did not expect from earlier finds, Adali said in a statement. They reflect an earlier phase of Assyrian presence in the region when local elements were more emphasized. The deities on the wall panel suggest that it was the locus for regional fertility cult of Syro-Anatolian and Aramaean deities, with rituals overseen by early Neo-Assyrian authorities. One of those authorities might have been Muking Abwa, a Neo-Assyrian official who lived during the reign of the Assyrian king Adad-nirari III, from 811 BC to 783 BC. The researchers identified an inscription that might refer to Muking Abwa. It's possible that Muking Abwa took control of the region and that he used this complex to integrate with and win over locals. Meanwhile, the presence of Neo-Assyrian art in this complex doesn't necessarily mean that the empire's artists created this panel. Rather, it's likely that the panel was made by local artists serving Assyrian authorities who adapted Neo-Assyrian art in a provincial context. He added that the team suspects further excavations will uncover more areas of the underground complex and possibly yield more examples of artwork, as only a small part of the whole site has been explored so far. A full-scale excavation is expected to take place when the entirety of the site has been prepared according to procedures of Turkish cultural heritage laws. But you know what? This is very interesting, but after only 2 months, according to this, that they were able to go in there and study and they find this panel, what makes them think that this is a regional fertility cult? I mean, it doesn't explain it. It says, it suggests that it's the locus for a regional fertility cult of blah, 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 because, like fill in the blank. Why? What is it? Because from what they show in these pictures, all they show is, like they said, a line or a procession of Assyrian deities, and that's it. What is it? You know what? And I have a feeling that that is like a little drum roll, and later on they'll come out and give more information on it. But it's like I'm waiting for the big reveal, and that at their goddess, you know what? That I've heard of this goddess before, and I know that because during those times, all these goddesses they were given different names. Okay, Atargatis, the goddess of Hierapolis, Bambis, and Syria, whose usual name among Greeks and Romans was the Syrian goddess, a mother goddess, giver of fertility. Okay, so I'm going to look into, she's more, yes, Syrian deity. Atargatis, story of the first mermaid. This is very interesting. I'm going to look her up. All right, this is the last article. This is out of BBC. Do you have a lost twin? So, a surprisingly high number of people begin life as a twin without ever realizing. Could a new test reveal if you had a co-twin before you were born? As a child, Jeffrey Craig had recurring dreams that he had an identical twin. The dreams were frequent and always the same. There was another version of me lying in bed beside me. It wasn't a stranger. I knew that it was another me. It was a bit surprising, but I wasn't scared. It was actually soothing. During his research as an associate professor at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute in Australia, Craig learned about vanishing twin syndrome, whereby one twin dies early on in the pregnancy. Remnants of that twin may remain in the womb, or the tissue may disintegrate and the cells be absorbed by the other twin or the placenta. Reading about this, Craig began to question whether the dream had more significance. I began to wonder if I had a distant memory of sharing a womb with a twin, says Craig, who is now a lecturer in epigenetics and cell biology at Deakin University School of Medicine and Deputy Director of Twins Research Australia. Recent research on vanishing twins in which Craig was not involved, but which he peer-reviewed, may help solve his mystery. A global team of twin researchers have discovered a way of finding out if someone was once an identical twin, regardless of whether their other twin is still alive or was lost before they were born. The method's accuracy is about 60 to 80%. Craig considers it as a major advance in the field, and he is also deeply curious on a personal level. If the researchers succeed in developing a reliable test to identify people who lost a co-twin in the womb, I could test my hypothesis that the dream I had in which there was another me sleeping beside me originated because I started life as a twin, he writes in an email. The odds of having once been a twin are higher than many realize. The rate of twins among live birth is only about 1.3%, but as many as 12% of all naturally conceived pregnancies may begin as twin pregnancies. According to one study, in about 1 in 8 of such pregnancies, one of the twins vanishes, resulting in a single birth, the study suggests. Those who are left-handed may have an even higher probability because twins are more likely to be left-handed. While 9% of the general population is left-handed, 15% of identical twins and 12% of non-identical twins are left-handers. Helping people uncover if they started life as a twin could have important implications for their health, some experts say. It may also contribute to a better understanding of identical twins and their early development, many aspects of which are still shrouded in mystery. Mysterious twins. The scientists did not originally set out to develop a test to find out if people had vanished twins. Instead, their initial goal was much more fundamental, to look for differences in the epigenome, meaning chemical tags that mark the human genome and tell it what to do. That could lead to a better understanding of exactly how and why identical twins form in the first place. Identical twins, also known as monozygotic twins, form when one egg, fertilized by one sperm, splits early on. Finding an explanation for why the egg splits has proven elusive. The leading hypothesis is that it occurs at random. Identical twins occur in few species: humans, dogs, cattle, horses, and pigs. From an evolutionary perspective, their existence doesn't make much sense, since producing offspring with genetic diversity provides a better chance of survival. We know so much about the human body, but despite many years of research, we still have no idea where identical twins come from. It's one of the remaining mysteries in human biology, says Jenny Van Dongen, an expert in twin research and epigenetics at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, who led the study. The researchers originally wanted to investigate the role of so-called epigenetic processes, that is, chemical markers that sit on top of genes and can switch them on or off in the formation of twins. Such epigenetic markers can be added to or removed from genes by the human body in response to changes in a person's environment or lifestyle. The role of epigenetic processes has been studied in fields as diverse as trauma research and cancer prevention. Epigenetic changes have also been found to be essential for early human development when the embryo is first formed. In particular, DNA methylation, a process by which a small chemical tag known as a methyl group is added to the DNA, helps regulate how embryonic genes function, thereby enabling healthy development. To find out if different levels of DNA methylation also played a part in the formation of twins, the team analyzed levels of DNA methylation in 3,046 existing DNA samples from identical twins in the UK, Australia, the Netherlands, and Finland. They compared this pattern to a control group of 3,396 non-identical twins. This ensured that the two groups were as similar as possible, having both shared a womb with a twin, the difference only being that the identical ones resulted from the split egg. The researchers found a characteristic pattern of methylation in the identical twins. Samples, also known as a molecular signature or epigenetic signature. When they analyzed samples from the same people taken at different points over time, they discovered that this pattern remained stable. The precise role of this chemical signature in the formation of identical twins is not entirely clear. It could be a kind of chemical scar left by the process of the egg splitting, or it could be what led to the split in the first place. But as the paper notes, the discovery of this distinctive, stable signature resulted in a never expected side outcome. Because identical twins keep the epigenetic signature all their lives, it can be used to find out if someone was originally an identical twin, even if their other twin was never born. Using the discovery, the researchers developed an algorithm to predict whether someone is an identical twin and applied it to fresh data sets. When tested on these data sets, the algorithm's predictions had an accuracy rate of 60 to 80%. This means that even decades after their birth, a surviving identical twin could learn of their lost twin's existence through a simple cheek swab. We don't know if the test will ever be 100% accurate, but there are things we can try, such as more complicated mathematical algorithm. The test only applies to identical twins. Non-identical or fraternal twins form in an entirely different way, namely, when a woman produces two eggs and each is fertilized by different sperm. Genetically, this makes them as similar as siblings. The factors that influence the chance of having non-identical twins are much better understood than for identical twins. Older mothers and mothers from families where non-identical twins are common are more likely to have them. For example, ethnicity can also be a factor. The chances of being a non-identical twin are highest among Nigerians with a rate of 40.2 per 1,000 births, and lowest among the Japanese at 10.45 per 1,000 births. Lost twins. The test could shed new light on a range of twin-related scientific questions. Firstly, by simply establishing more clearly who is a twin. On an individual level, it could help people struggling with painful uncertainty over their identity and the possibility of having lost a twin. It is a major breakthrough for several reasons, said Nancy L. Siegel, a psychology professor specializing in twin studies at California State University. Fullerton and the author of a new book on separated twins called Deliberately Divided. It offers new insights into the biological processes underlying identical twinning. It helps identify cases of identical twin survivors whose co-twins died at birth. It also allows confirmation of suspected switched at birth identical twin cases when DNA testing may not be immediately feasible. Siegel regularly receives emails from people who are searching for their lost twin. Some tell me they've been in therapy and realize that the root of their problem is that their identical twin died at birth. Says Siegel, they say they feel lost. They are really hung up on it. Jenny Van Dongen, the researcher who co-developed the test, has received around 30 emails from people wanting to take it. In some cases, their mother said there were signs of a miscarriage during pregnancy. Others simply have a hunch. Judith Hall, professor emerita at the University of British Columbia, has been studying twins for 50 years and is considered a world authority in genetics and pediatrics. Her daughter believes she was an identical twin, although Hall herself had no indications at the time. She knows that she had a twin. She has dreams about it, says Hall simply. However, Siegel is skeptical about prenatal memories of a lost twin. It's a romantic notion, she says. As a scientist, I remain open to the evidence that it could be possible, but so far I've not seen it. In all the twins I've studied who were raised apart after being separated at birth, not one of them thought they were a twin. They were as surprised as we were when to become one. There are various hypotheses as to why a twin vanishes. It could be that something is wrong with one fetus, or perhaps the mother doesn't have enough room. Says Siegel, the womb was designed for one baby, not two. It could simply be a correction to ensure the health of the twin who survives. If a twin disappears before 12 weeks, it is unlikely the mother would know because ultrasounds are rarely conducted that early. In medical terms, it is called vanishing twin syndrome because at an early ultrasound there are two heartbeats, but later one of them seems to disappear, says Van Dongen. However, those who have lost a twin pregnancy prefer to call it a stillborn pregnancy. Sometimes there are visible remnants of the other twin. A rare phenomenon known as fetus papyriasis or paper doll fetus describes a mummified fetus that died before the age of 10 weeks. It is flattened between the membranes of the living twin and uterine wall. It occurs in 1 in 12,000 pregnancies. It is like a small piece of parchment that looks like a tiny baby, says Craig, the twin researcher. An even rarer occurrence is called fetus in fetu or parasitic twin, when one twin is absorbed inside the other and parts of that twin remain in the other. Quite often there's a structure that resembles a spine, and there can be hair and parts of a limb, says Van Dongen. Fetus and fetus is extremely rare. It occurs in about 1 in 500,000 live births, and there have only been 200 cases reported globally. A person may have a lump somewhere that they can only get checked out as an adult. You can imagine how surprising it would be if an x-ray reveals that their twin is tucked away in their abdominal cavity, says Craig. In the case of non-identical twins, some of the deceased twin's genetic material may find its way into the surviving twin. In a remarkable case in 2015, a man underwent fertility treatments and the DNA in his sperm turned out to be 90% his and 10% that of his unborn fraternal twin. While he and his twin shared a womb, he absorbed some of his twin cells, effectively becoming a blend of himself and his brother. The passing of cells between twins or triplets during early development was once considered rare, but is in fact not that uncommon. Around 8% of non-identical twins and 21% of triplets have two blood groups. This makes them a chimera, a fusion of two bodies. Even the distinction between identical and non-identical twins may not be as clear as they once thought. For example, it was once believed that identical twins always shared a single placenta, while non-identical twins each had their own placenta. When Sydney-based digital marketer Claire Chow had an ultrasound at 10 weeks, she was told that there were two amniotic sacs and two placentas, and that she was therefore having fraternal or non-identical twins. But when her daughters Madeline and Mia were born, she noticed that they seemed completely alike. Maddie had a rounder face and Mia had a tiny mark on her nose. Those were the only differences. As the girls grew older, strangers kept commenting on how identical they were. At the age of 4, the twins were DNA tested. They are 99.99% identical. The girls have a freckle in the exact same spot on the opposite side of their face. They have opposite squinty eyes. They're both right-handed, but Maddie used her left hand when she was younger, says Chow. Such mirroring characteristics occur in 25% of identical twins, known as mirror twins. Mirror twins have birthmarks, organs, and dominant hands on opposite sides of their body, and one may be left-handed while the other is right-handed. Identical twins also have one potentially life-saving characteristics. They can have transplants from one another without any need to artificially suppress their immune system. Their bodies generally easily accept each other's parts. Testing at birth. Given such important aspects of identical twinhood, Craig and Siegel advocate DNA testing all twins at birth to check if they're identical or fraternal. Some people think that DNA testing twins isn't important, but I think they're misguided. It's a very profound piece of information about your identity. For those who are born as apparent singletons, the prospect of being able to test for hidden twins later in life may transform entire areas of research in healthcare. Judith Hall is currently trying to secure funding to use the new test on singletons with congenital anomalies such as neural tube defects and arthrogryposis, a group of conditions that affects the joints. Identical twins are more likely to suffer from these conditions, as well as cerebral palsy. It may turn out that singleton with these conditions began their life as an identical twin. We do not entirely understand the cause of cerebral palsy, says Van Dongen. If we can determine that a significant number of patients with cerebral palsy used to have a monozygotic twin, then we may find better treatment targets. Her team published the algorithms so that others can use it. Craig, who used to dream of a lost twin, plans to take the test when the accuracy rate improves. I think would have liked to have had a twin, he says. I was the eldest child in my family, and I wasn't naturally a social person. I remember hiding behind the cubby house when I was in kindergarten. Maybe I would have been more social if I'd had a twin, because having a twin teaches sociability. Or you could just be an introvert. That's Marlene my own observation. However, he still feels ambivalent about the idea of finally having an answer. The question is, what would it mean for me and for my parents? Would it cause us grief? I've got to really think about whether I want this information, or perhaps it would provide some kind of closure. You know what? Or you just could be an introvert. There's extroverts and there's introverts. Doesn't mean you lost a twin. It could just be you're a shy kid. Or that does happen. And it's really interesting because one of these things that they specified at the very beginning is this normally occurring twin pregnancy. And I think the reason why they brought that up is that I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of stars and important people, everybody's having twins, and you know what it is. It's basically you're impregnated with twins. All right, it's like okay, just go through the pregnancy birth thing once, and of course, I'm almost positive they don't deliver normally. They have a cesarean section, and it's like okay, I just want two kids so they can have a sibling, but I'm going to go through this once. So that I think that's why they specify very a normally occurring pregnancy. All right, guys, it's been interesting. I will be back soon with another weird, weird day in our world, which is wonderful, isn't it? Until then, take care.